Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, you know what the problem with Hollywood is? They make shit. Unbelievable, unremarkable shit. This is sword shit. Sorry, Swordfish. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I'm Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Swordfish, which we'll be talking about today. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you doing this week?
Thanks for asking. I have an update from last week. We've been having perfect, cool, sunny days, and so I'm still walking.
Nice.
I'm getting outside, trying to practice some gratitude, enjoy these walkable days while they last, because I know it's going to be miserably hot before I know it.
What a day for a daydream.
I know what you mean.
When does it start getting like super hot in Cali?
I don't know, anytime.
It's pretty unpredictable, right?
The gods may curse us at any moment, but I have a hard time remembering the weather is ever different from the way it is at this exact moment. So, actually, I'm not going to be able to do this when it's hot.
I'm in the Northeast in New England. It's supposed to be super cold, but it's going to be 50 tomorrow, Sunday, Monday. So I don't know what the hell's going on.
That's a good thing, right?
If we're looking at it in the short term, it's very much a good thing.
If you told me it's going to be 50 here tomorrow, I'd be like, oh shit, a cold snap. And what I have to do is stock up on firewood.
It's all relative. 50 for me is t-shirt and shorts weather right now. But there's nothing worse than a t-shirt and shorts in January guy who has to like bring it up a lot. Like, oh yeah, no, the cold doesn't really bother me. So shut up, man. No one cares.
We don't have too many of those people over here, but I know what you mean.
But did you have anything that you watched this week you wanted to talk about with the listeners?
I do have something fun because it's new. It doesn't tie into this week's movie, but I watched a movie called Decision to Leave. Came out in October of last year. It's back, or it's still in theaters now because it's Oscar season, and this is an Oscar type of a candidate, although I think maybe it got snubbed. I'm not sure.
It did get snubbed, yeah.
Did it? Okay. But you don't have to go to theater because it's also streaming on Mubi, not to be confused with Tubi. This is Mubi, and you can get a free trial of it through your Amazon Prime Video. That's what I did, and I canceled it before it turned into a paid thing. The director, Park Chan-wook, won Best Director at Cannes this year. Mm-hmm. He's famous for Old Boy, the original one, not the contentious American remake.
Spike Lee made that one, weirdly enough. It doesn't feel like a movie Spike Lee would have made.
Yeah, I did not remember that. This movie's not brutal like Old Boy. It's more of a slowly unfolding mystery with a deep romantic thread to it. So it feels kind of Hitchcocky in that way. People have compared it to Vertigo. Despite it being a murder mystery, though, it maintains this gentle kind of pensive mood like a romance would. So it works really well. It's rewarding as both those genres, which is not easy to do. It's not as transporting a movie as the hype led me to maybe expect. Like I heard some of our favorite podcasters talking this movie up like crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, it's going to blow my mind. It's a really solid genre movie. And if you like noir stuff and mysteries with romantic danger interwoven, you'll really love it. It's a very solid, good movie. I definitely recommend.
That's good to hear. I didn't know much about it. And it wasn't really on my radar, but hearing you describe it the way you did has me interested. I think I'm going to give it a shot. Hopefully over the weekend, I can find some time to check it out while I wait for the Bengals to play in the AFC Championship game.
Oh boy, talk about thrillers and suspense.
I hope not.
I mean, hopefully it's a cakewalk, but
no, I'm not anticipating a cakewalk. I'm not a sports fan that talks smack when my team's doing well. Being a Bengals fan throughout many decades of ineptitude has made me wary of getting too comfortable with success.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, oh yeah, I just want everyone to have fun.
It's good to be humble.
Just be nice to each other.
Have a good game.
Speaking of being humble and everyone getting along. No, it's a terrible segue for the movie I wanted to talk about. I checked out the new girl boss of the moment, queer icon, all around having it all.
Yes.
Megan
with a 3.
M3 Gan. It's a murderous android movie, but like a silly one.
That's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It's a fun movie. It's so silly and so dumb, but it's always aware of what it's doing. It's very much a tongue-in-cheek kind of action horror comedy. You have to put comedy in as one of the genres it falls into because the filmmakers clearly were going for a kind of campiness and over-the-top sensibility to the surroundings and the events, but it's a good time. It's like an hour and 40 minutes. It's PG-13. It feels like there was some stuff left on the cutting room floor in terms of Megan getting a little nastier.
Okay.
And some of the kills, you have to use your imagination quite a bit, which is fine. But it doesn't feel like they were filmed that way. Like sometimes you film a horror movie knowing it's going to be PG-13, and then you can get really creative with what you show and what you let the audience to imagine. And it can sometimes actually heighten the experience. But with Megan, it felt like they had to edit out blood from these murder scenes, and it made for awkwardness in some of them.
I see what you mean.
That being said, I recommend it if you're just looking to kill some time, have some fun. Megan's going to be back, apparently, according to Jason Blum. There's going to be another one.
Oh, nice.
So M4 again. So catch up and check it out. I think it's on Prime Video now. So yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Has an inkling can check it out.
Cool. That's a nice little success story. We love how horror movies can do that sometimes, just come out of nowhere and become a little thing.
Skinamarink cost, what, $15,000, and it's made a couple million at the box office since being released.
Okay.
So people still turn out to the theater to see horror movies, even if they don't for other genres for whatever reason. You know, it's becoming more of like a year-round thing. It used to be they would flood the theaters with them in September, October, November, but now we're seeing summer blockbuster horror movies come out.
It's a positive thing.
I think so. I just wish other movies could get some audiences in the theater. And I say that as someone who hasn't been to the theater in like 6 months, so I'm not doing my part.
I hear that. I don't remember what the inside of a theater looks like.
There's nothing like seeing a movie in a theater still. I don't want them to go away, so I got to start doing my part.
Actually, I just got a good look at the inside of a theater. I think it's full of crates of machine guns and a bus that some bad guys are welding shit onto.
Here we go. We're talking about Swordfish. Ian, I did see this movie in theaters, but I suspect you didn't.
No, I did not.
So why don't you tell me what you knew about Swordfish before getting ready to record this pod?
I have an interesting story. So this movie came out while I was working in the movie website design business. And I don't remember exactly, but I think that I almost worked on it. Or if not, someone I know did. My clue was that I knew this movie by a different title. In my head, I remembered this movie coming out and it was called Operation Swordfish. And no one else calls it that. When I started searching for it, I'm like, what happened? Why is that title stuck in my mind? And I just found out today, accidentally, that was the URL. That was the website. I watched the trailer, the original trailer, and I saw at the end, it's like operationswordfish.com. And you can't go there now. Warner Brothers didn't keep the website up. But
I'm trying to fire up the Wayback Machine and see if I can pull it up. It could critique Ian's work in real time. Like, I don't know. I don't like what you did with this font here.
I can't remember doing anything on it. That's why I think that maybe I just heard about it. Maybe somebody else in the office was working on it, but I didn't touch that project or something. Because I'm like, how did I get that name stuck in my head? And I think it might have also been a pre-release title of the movie. And I saw some international box covers where they actually said Operation Swordfish, but like in Spanish, but they had the word operation in the title.
Operacion.
Anyway, I didn't work on it and I didn't see it. So all I knew was a mistaken version of the title and I got to come to it fresh. But I knew that it was a corny hacker movie, a 90s style hacker movie put out in 2001.
Yeah, my relationship with Swordfish is a little different. I wasn't employed on the movie as I was a child, but it was a movie I remember seeing in theaters. And actually, when I was looking into the box office returns for this movie, I was going to the movie theater a fucking lot when this movie came out.
Really?
Yeah, it opened with Evolution. They opened the same week.
Okay.
Previous episode, Evolution, which I saw in theaters.
That's a good tidbit.
And then the week after, or was it 2 weeks after, the first Fast and the Furious movie opened, which I also saw in theaters. So I'm like, that's 3 weekends in a row at least. And then Pearl Harbor was a couple weeks into its run, which I also saw in theaters. Lara Croft Tomb Raider, which I was like, but then I remembered, like, I didn't have fucking air conditioning. And this was June in New York City. I was like, of course I was at the movies every day. Fuck else was I going to do? It was cold in there. You know, you could get a break from the heat. So yeah, I saw this movie in theaters and I loved it. And then when it came out on DVD, we went to my friend's house. We would watch it like, I don't know, a couple times a month. We would just put it on and like in the background while we bullshitted and watch Swordfish. It was like one of those movies that were just part of our group. And then I like so many movies that I bring up in this context, I just fucking forgot about it forever. And then I was delighted to see that it was actually a bomb so that I could talk about it on the podcast a little bit and go back and revisit it. And much like Evolution, some of the charm has worn off in the ensuing years.
It actually, it resembles Evolution in a certain way of that we found that movie had a juvenile sensibility to it that didn't work so well once you had grown up and matured. This movie has a certain kind of juvenile sensibility. It's not the same kind of randy bad joke sensibility.
It's cynical.
It's like a juvenile, edgy nihilism.
It feels of a piece with like Crank High Voltage or the Boondock Saints you brought up Troy Duffy in your notes on the movie.
Yeah.
So I want to give you credit for drawing that comparison. But yeah, it's got that cynicism, that air of like, I feel like it hates its audience to some extent.
It's got this kind of a sneer to it. It's very hard to articulate these things because they are just impressions you get, but it makes you think about the extent to which movies are really selling you somebody's worldview, right? Even in just small choices. What are the plot points? How do the characters talk? How do they react to the situations? How does the movie want you to think about the outcomes that it shows you? And this one just, in many subtle and not so subtle ways, just as kind of like, the world sucks and everything's fucked up, but I love it. And check it out, dude. Isn't that fucked up? Okay, but
check out these sweet tits. Isn't that cool?
There's that too.
Yeah.
There's definitely that. I didn't mention, I did know that there was some boobies in this movie back in the day.
Yeah, I get into it in my monologue too. Don't worry. It was pretty prevalent in the news cycle. But this movie, to me, I was just utterly shocked watching it that there was not butt rock on the soundtrack, because this feels like Butt Rock the movie. Like everything about it, from Hugh Jackman's weird little hoop earring to
That's true.
Just like
frosted tips,
the soul patch. Everyone's got weird hair and facial hair, and the side characters are all dressed in these like weird peacocky ways for no reason. Kind of like another Travolta movie from the early 2000s we covered, The Punisher. You remember he had some henchmen in that movie that were just styling their hair and facial hair and their outfits in these very extreme ways to draw attention to themselves, which is, I would think, the opposite of what you want to do as a henchman.
Back in that day, I guess maybe they didn't stand out as much compared to how we all dressed. But yeah, Travolta's bad guy in The Punisher could have been another secret identity of the bad guy in this movie.
He's more of a hothead in The Punisher. Like, he's clearly more emotional, whereas Gabriel's kind of the master of his realm at all times type one of those shithead, I knew that was going to happen and I planned for it already type of villains that I hate because they're not real. Like, nobody exists like that. Whereas Howard Satan was kind of relatable. Like, oh man, my wife's going to be really mad at me if I don't kill this guy and his whole family. So I better go do it.
He got very upset about some things that Gabriel would just shrug off.
Right. Be like, don't worry, this is part of the plan. Like,
exactly.
Did you plan for this, you fucking maniac? But yeah, I don't know. You want me to get into the making of this movie? It's going to be a short monologue. There's not a ton of supplemental material out there on the internet about Swordfish.
I like that. Keep it simple. Let's hear how it happened.
There's not a lot of information out there about the production of Swordfish, which seems weird for a $100 million summer blockbuster. Pretty much every pre-release story about the movie, and also every post-release story about the movie, talks about Halle Berry's boobs for about 80% of the text.
With boobs like that, who needs journalism?
Director Dominic Sena was a longtime veteran of music videos and made his feature film debut with cult favorite California, with a K. He'd move on to future episode Gone in 60 Seconds before tackling Swordfish, a movie about an ex-con hacker lured in to do one last job for John Travolta with a soul patch.
Too bad the job wasn't barber.
The script was written by computer misunderstander Skip Woods, in only his second screenwriting credit after his debut Thursday, which he also directed. In addition to the aforementioned Travolta, who turned the role down a reported 6 times before agreeing to play Big Bad Gabriel, Sena had to cast his hero hacker Stanley Jobson, one of the dorkiest names for an action hero ever conceived. He considered John Cusack and Val Kilmer before deciding their prior roles came with too much baggage, and moved on to emerging star Hugh Jackman, who had played Wolverine in the first X-Men movie to critical acclaim, but didn't have many credits under his belt yet. He wanted to cast Bridget Moynihan as femme fatale Ginger, but she turned it down due to gratuitous nudity, and instead of removing the totally gratuitous nudity, he moved on to Halle Berry,
who showed off her totally gratuitous boobities.
Rounding out the cast with Don Cheadle and a bunch of hey, I know that person actors, like Vinnie Jones, Sam Shepard, and Drea De Matteo. Filming was set to begin around Los Angeles in September of 2000. Filming would wrap up in December of 2000, and a release date of June 8th, 2001 was set, which is ambitious considering how many special effects are in the movie.
All right, boys, you got 6 months and 1 million tips to frost.
Critics hated the movie as it sits at 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, and audiences were lukewarm as well, as it took in $18.1 million its opening weekend and would eventually earn $147 million, not nearly enough to turn a profit. It's mostly forgotten now, except by me, who saw it in theaters and watched it on DVD a bunch of times.
This is one of those that started strong. That's a pretty good opening weekend, right?
Yeah, usually about 10% of the budget, if you can maintain that. And it didn't drop that much in its second week. It only had a 30% drop going into its second week. It faded fast once some other competition started coming out.
You could say it faded fast and furious.
Oh, I mean, that was a sleeper hit. Nobody really expected The Fast and the Furious to be a big deal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was brand new at the time.
So there was no point in counter-programming against it and not releasing in its wake.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a bit of a runaway train that picked up Swordfish by a helicopter and carried it to the bargain bin.
A lot of movies we say, oh, the critics hated it and that just sunk it before it ever had a chance. But this movie, especially to have 2 decent weeks, that also suggests that the audience didn't hate it right away, but they eventually soured on it, or they just found something better.
Air conditioning. I wonder if that's affected like movie going now that air conditioning is more readily available.
Sure, that's part of the changing dynamic.
But that's a tangent we can get on in another moment. But yeah, this movie wasn't a total dud at the box office, but I was a little surprised to hear it cost $100 million because Dominic Sena has never made a movie that made money, period. So like, where are you giving this guy $100 million? Hugh Jackman's not really a star yet. This was only his 5th movie, I found out, which was surprising. Because even when he was like new in Hollywood, he was an older guy. I think he was in his 30s by the time like he he became Wolverine.
Okay.
So you expected him to maybe have had more of a career in Australia, but I think he was like a theater guy or a TV guy over there and wasn't a movie star. I guess Halle Berry was probably the biggest name in this movie at the time. Travolta already used up the goodwill from his Pulp Fiction comeback and was kind of doing like middling stuff by this point, which we talked about more in depth on The Punisher.
Jackman, he was a good choice business strategy wise for this role, because to catch a guy like that, it's just like catching Chris Hemsworth after Thor dropped. Like, he was queued up in a couple other movies, but he wasn't really big until that took off. So Wolverine certainly made Jackman's reputation with American audiences. And if this movie was better, and if he was better in it, it could have surfed that wave. It would have been seen as a brilliant stroke to get him at that point. But it wasn't good. And he's one of my least favorite things about the movie, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, surprising to hear, but I don't necessarily disagree with you. We'll have to get into it more when we start talking about the story, and we can get onto the various ways in which it fails his character, or maybe his performance fails his character. But I see what you mean. It could have been almost like a Russell Crowe in LA Confidential situation, where it's like film nerds know this guy and are like excited about him, but the general audience hasn't really caught on yet, but you can get him for cheap and it could be like a star-making turn. Yeah. Helps the movie, helps the actor. Clearly didn't work out that way, but obviously he had plenty of other roles to fall back on that made him into the megastar he would eventually become. But yeah, it's a strange little movie. I'm excited to talk about it. It feels super anachronistic in some ways, not like in the technology aspect so much, but just like in the way you make a movie. It seems like they didn't do any blocking or any storyboarding. They showed up. They were like, we got to film some stuff. Let's just do it.
It's a strange movie. It's got a lot of attitude. It's got a lot of personality. I don't think that we vibed with the personality of the movie. It's got a lot of visual style that I'm not terribly impressed with, but Sena was famous as a music video director. And so it was kind of a thing to give those guys feature films at the time. It's still a perfectly valid way to come up as a director.
Yeah, commercials and music videos are a very common pipeline into the...
Yeah, totally. That hasn't gone away, but there was definitely a thing where music videos were still new enough that people were doing just stuff that was visually interesting, and that was enough to carry the day on music videos. And then they were expected to bring their style. We talked about that with Tarsem and The Cell and stuff. I think that was around the same time. So this is like another guy in that mold of, oh, what if he made the FBI headquarters all green and gloomy? Like, okay, it looks cool like a music video, but why is Don Cheadle, the FBI agent, starring in a music video?
Dominic Sena has fun with his fucking color filters in this movie. Every scene needs to have some strange tint for some reason or another. Usually green or yellow. I think are the two most common ones I've seen. But yeah, he's going full Tony Scott on this at times, but without the kind of kinetic, fast-paced editing that makes those decisions feel deliberate in Tony Scott movies.
And even Tony Scott can feel cheap and trashy when he's not on top of his game.
Go watch Domino if you don't believe me.
Yeah, and this sometimes it's fun. Like, we'll get into it, but the opening of this movie, the style is a little bit over the top and obnoxious, but it has its charms. And then the charms of the movie start to wear off shortly afterwards, I would say.
You want to walk us through the first leg of the movie? We can start talking about its charms and how they wear off.
All right, let's log in. There's a powerful underworld mastermind named Gabriel, played by John Travolta, a blowhard who's equal parts smarmy and ruthlessly violent. By the end of the movie, Gabriel will be leading his crew in a high-tech bank heist standoff, holding a dozen hostages strapped in explosives. But for now, Gabriel has just sent his beautiful sidekick Ginger, played by Halle Berry, to recruit a formerly notorious hacker named Stanley, played by Hugh Jackman. Stanley is fresh out of prison, trying to go straight and win custody of his 10-year-old daughter from his ex-wife. But the money's too good, so Stanley agrees to go meet Gabriel. In the middle of a nightclub, Gabriel tests Stanley by giving him 60 seconds to hack into the Defense Department, while one guy has a gun to his head and another woman sexually assaults him. And Stanley passes the test.
We do learn her name. It's Helga.
I'm sorry for not crediting the actress who played Helga.
It's also heavily implied she's also blown John Travolta at some point, as he's like, oh yeah, she's good, right?
Oh, that's true. Oh yeah. He makes so many smarmy comments. You can't even keep track of them all.
John Travolta, to me, basically the last time I could perceive him as like a sexual being was Saturday Night Fever. He is not a person that has sex, in my opinion. Like, that's not part of his person.
No, I know what you mean. And despite the fact that, a lot of his role in this movie is throwing sex at Stanley, pushing Ginger and Stanley together in sexual situations and enjoying all that, it has a weird spin because of what you and I both perceive about Travolta, is that, like, this doesn't mean to him what it means to me about sex, maybe. Like, he's on a different plane in relationship to the sex on the screen.
Was that a pun? Because he's also a pilot.
Oh, shit. It is now. I was unintentional.
But you knew that about him, right? He's an accomplished pilot.
I remember that now. Yeah, that's his big hobby. But like,
better at it than Harrison Ford, to be clear.
Yes, he's
motherfucker can't stop crashing planes.
He's landed successfully, as far as we know, every time. But yeah, all that being said, it works for me. I like Travolta in this. I like his choices. As gross as this character is, I enjoy him on screen, and I can't say that for everybody in the movie.
Because he knows what movie he's in, too. Yeah, the character's gross, so he's playing him gross. He's not trying to make, although it does not jibe with 100% of what he said about why he took the role, because he was like, the director told me that this guy, like, he really is in his mind a patriot, and he thinks that it's okay to sacrifice the lives of a few people to save the American way of life, and blah. Yeah, his character gives several speeches in the movie along those lines. But then you watch it, and you seem just more like a pimp than like a patriot. You're just like a weird, creepy, soul-patched.
He plays the patriotic stuff real when he gets to it, but that comes 3/4 through the movie when he reveals the depth of his patriotism. Before that, the whole time you think he's just a smarmy drug dealing pimp, which he's not.
He still kind of is.
He kind of is. That's where the movie, the kind of like cheekiness of the screenwriting comes through, where it's, oh yeah, he's not really that, but he's telling you that. He's pulling a con the whole time. There's this kind of thing that we'll get into later when it starts to come up explicitly. He's playing a role, everybody's playing a role, and the movie's kind of getting over on you, but it's not that fun to be gotten over by the fact that Jon Travolta is sending naked women in waves at Stanley.
My feeling, and we'll talk more about this when we get to the reveal of the big misdirection, is that if you need to clarify the scheme of the bad guy with flashbacks to scenes that never happened in the movie, then you didn't set it up right. Now you're just like giving us information we didn't originally have. So it wasn't fun mystery. We can't solve it.
No, I think you're right. That's emblematic of the shoddy nature of everything in this movie. The characters' stated intentions, like you said, there's some misdirection, there's some conflict in what they seem to be about. But it all, even when you go, oh, okay, maybe if I unpack it, it'll all click. It doesn't quite all click. People still give kind of bullshit justifications for what they say and do, and everything doesn't quite line up, which kind of makes you feel like they're hand waving at you and expecting you to swallow it without much scrutiny.
There's very few people in this movie that behave like consistently throughout, which is a sign of a bad screenplay.
But they're selling it to you as, no, that's because I tricked you.
Most evident in the Ginger character, who's just every time we meet her, we learn something new about her. And then 3 scenes later, we're like, wait, no, that wasn't actually the case.
She's kind of nobody. She's kind of like the cop said she's nothing, doesn't matter. But before we get to Ginger, let's stay on Gabriel for a minute, because he starts the movie.
Right. My intro was a reference to the monologue he's giving when the movie begins.
He gives a straight monologue into the camera for a minute before he starts to cheat and show you that he's actually talking to some characters and not directly to the screen. But what is he talking about? He's talking about the movies?
Dog Day Afternoon.
Day Afternoon. He's a movie buff. Did Quentin Tarantino write this movie? Because he's doing a real attempt at a Tarantino monologue.
The song Like a Virgin, is it not? Yeah, it's a very Tarantino-esque monologue. I don't think it's bad. The monologue itself isn't great. I do like the reveal you alluded to when we learn the setting that he's in and who he's talking to and the circumstances that he's giving the speech under.
Yes.
I thought that was a nice little bit of filmmaking when they revealed that he's actually like in a bank with hostages talking to the cops. It's just a little creative way to open the movie that I didn't really expect from it.
Yeah, that is something that you probably haven't seen before, right? It opens up in a coffee shop. He's having coffee with these 2 dudes. It's very casual, and he's just holding court about how movies are and what Dog Day Afternoon should have done differently. He should have killed the hostages. And then it pulls back, and he's like, okay, let's get back to work. And he's surrounded by SWAT team guys, and he's holding a detonator, which is the reason why he can keep the FBI agent at bay while he shoots the shit with him. And I'm like, oh, that is crazy. And like the fact that they tried a speech that was so distracting because of its pompous takes on movies and violence, and yet it was more even than you thought it would be. So in that case, their misdirection worked on me.
But then one of the hostages tries to run away, and she explodes. We find out that she's got like a little dog collar on her that if she gets too far away, it will trigger.
Poor Don Cheadle tries everything to get the SWAT team member to not take her away from the bank, except to say she'll blow up if you take her away from He doesn't bother to tell anybody
Bring her
why.
back.
He's just
Stop.
like, no, don't do that. Stop doing that. And like, why would a SWAT team member
I hate when you
stop
do
doing
that.
Yeah, just because you were like saying no, like someone tell him why she's going to blow up. But no, they weren't that good at communication. They were just shouting. And then there's a really cool Matrix effect. We talked about the visuals. They went hardcore. They had, 5,000 still cameras around this location, and it does an incredible sweeping pan as everything blows up.
It was one of the most expensive shots of all time at the time it was filmed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was supposedly a big deal.
It looks good. It's fun. That first 10-minute chunk is pretty solid. It's enough to lure you into the movie, even if you have some problems with the tone and some of the characters already. But if it could stay on that level with things that surprised you and shocked you like that, it would have been a better movie. But it descends into some smarminess that's just not as fun.
I will say the action throughout the movie is pretty solidly done. I think probably because they used a lot of practical effects, you could tell. I don't think CGI was quite as widely available at the time, and they had a decent budget for some practical effects. They made the most out of it, but the same level of care was not used in the story, the more dramatic aspects of the film.
So now the next thing, do we meet Don Cheadle next next in the airport?
Next, we meet Axel, the hacker who gets
Right.
apprehended at the airport trying to get into the U.S., which he just leaves his other passport like in plain sight of the customs agent.
Yeah,
he hands her a passport, and then she's going through his laptop case, and he's got another passport just hanging out. She's like, huh?
Just
what the
sitting
heck?
in a nice little handy pocket in front of her. That's what this whole scene, I was like, they should have cut Axel. They didn't need Axel Torvalds, who's named after Linus Torvalds, the guy who
Famous
created
hacker,
Linux.
yeah.
But
Yeah, you could have a throwaway line about our other guy got caught at customs.
but the thing is, okay, this character does some interesting work. First of all, he gets arrested and he lets us meet Don Cheadle, and then he gets killed in FBI headquarters while he's being interrogated, which, as you point out, is a kind of an interesting way to show how powerful Gabriel is. As a device and the way it was pulled off, that wasn't bad.
Executed by, is that Vinnie Jones that shoots him?
Or is it Tom Cruise's cousin?
The fuck is Tom Cruise's cousin?
Mapother.
William Mapother?
Mapother.
Oh, he's the one who calls Don Cheadle.
Okay.
To like get him out of the room. He's the one that's calling and pretending he's his boss. That's, by the way, our justified crossover of the week, William Mapother.
Justified crossover of the week.
Okay.
He played Delroy Baker on Justified. He was a very important character. He was only in 2 episodes maybe, but then, spoiler alert, he gets killed. And the recovery of his body becomes like a key plot point for an entire season.
Oh, wow. That's fun.
And also probably best known as Ethan on Lost, one of the creepiest characters in a TV show ever.
Okay. I remembered his face.
He did great work in that show. He's got a weird blonde, like moppy wig here that just is not. He gets shot in a really funny way, by the way. I don't know if you noticed when he gets shot in this movie. It's at the bank. He gets shot like in the stomach, but he just goes like a thing. It's very hilarious.
I missed that.
He just kind of like shakes in place on his feet and goes like, ugh.
Oh, that's classic. I used to do that when I made movies because it's like it hurts to fall down dramatically.
There's a great Patton Oswalt bit about like Dirty Harry. Like everyone was up in arms about the violence, and all Dirty Harry is guys dying like this. It's him just like holding his stomach and like hunching over.
Yeah, that's a classic way to do it.
That's basically what Mapother does in this movie in his death scene. It's pretty amazing.
So I read about this. Tom Cruise's last name is Mapother. I think I read that he pronounced it Maybother. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if that's true. Cruise was his middle name and he dropped that name. But yeah, this is his first cousin. And he's in a lot of Tom Cruise movies where Tom Cruise stars and or produces. And once you know that fact, you can see the connection.
Interesting. He's a good actor, though. I do like that guy and stuff.
Yeah, he's not just a Nepo baby. He's good to have in a movie.
Yeah, he's still doing stuff. I'm just seeing if he's been in anything more recently that was like Tom Cruise-y. He was in the Minority Report miniseries.
Oh, okay.
So there's a little Cruise connection. Oh, and he was in Black Hat. All right, we'll be talking about him again in a couple months. We'll be covering Black Hat eventually. But yeah, so I think it's Vinnie Jones that shoots Axel through the two-way mirror. But yeah, it's a very long scene. It probably goes on like 10 minutes. And this isn't an overlong movie. I feel like the movie has a pretty good pace, but this does slow it down. But I really love Don Cheadle in this scene. I think he's great like in this one little sequence. And then he becomes neutered as the movie goes on because they really set him up to be like this kind of loose cannon maniac cop. He kind of beats the shit out of Axel's lawyer and throws him out of the room. Tells him to eat a dick on the way out, which is great line reading of Eat a Dick by Don Cheadle, by the way.
Yes, that's perfect. That's Don Cheadle being Don Cheadle, and he's in his prime in this. I loved him too.
But then he doesn't keep up that like maniac cop loose cannon energy for the rest of the movie, I think. He becomes a little more cuddly.
He has fun. We'll get to that in the next act when he chases down Stanley. He has some fun there too, but he's neutered by the story because this is really Gabriel's story, and Gabriel succeeds. Like Gabriel just succeeds at everything he does. So there's no room for the cop to struggle and then overcome. The cop just has to fade away because nothing gets in the way of Gabriel's plans.
Just like telling the audience what Gabriel's up to now, and then we have to follow along.
Yeah.
No pressure, but if you could drop in the clip of Don Cheadle yelling, "Eat a dick," because I just really love that line.
Eat a dick.
Like my favorite line delivery in a movie ever maybe is him in Out of Sight, another line that involves his dick. He's like, he doesn't have to die. He could just fall on something real hard, like a shiv or my dick. He's got a way with words when it's about his penis.
And this movie likes to say dick. Is that a 2000s thing or is that?
It's also a PG-13 movie. Oh no, is it? No, this is a rated R movie, isn't it? Yeah, they do curse a lot in this movie actually.
It becomes a theme because I had even forgotten that was Don Cheadle's line. The next scene we meet Halle Berry as Ginger, and the most noteworthy thing she says is, "I'm not here to suck your dick, Stanley."
She does say it just like that too, in like a very sing-songy weird way.
I was trying to actually channel her.
But then like 10 minutes later, she's just rubbing his dick through his jeans.
Yeah. So now she is there to suck his dick. Maybe it was just the timing was wrong.
What fuck happens to his dog after this scene? Because he's got a dog that like cuddles up to Ginger and he's like, oh, a traitor. And then we never see that dog again for the rest of the movie, as far as I can remember.
I forgot about the dog.
Stanley's a terrible dad to both his human child and his canine child.
He's kind of a Lethal Weapon Martin Riggs. He's living in a trailer trailer on the beach, except it's in an oil field. And let me just take a moment to acknowledge this production. Being the LA kid that I am, I love their dedication to staying in LA. They're like, we're doing the movie in LA. And yes, there's a senator, and so we have to show Washington, D.C. And it's fine if you can see the world-famous Bonaventure Hotel in the shot of Washington, D.C. No one knows that, even though we've already called it out on previous episodes as being kind of something you see in movies. And then they're suddenly in Midland, Texas, which is the Inglewood oil field. It's off of La Cienega Boulevard up in Baldwin Hills. You asked previously about Culver City. Some actor was from Culver City and saying they were tough.
Right, Emil Hirsch.
Emil Hirsch, yes. Well, he grew up close to the Inglewood oil field. It's one of the few urban oil fields left in the country. If you take what used to be one of the main city street shortcuts trying to get to LAX, if you didn't want to get on the 405 freeway, you would go up over La Cienega Boulevard, which goes up through these hills.
The Californians.
and you'd go by these oil wells, and it's weird to see in the city. And it works good as a stand-in for Texas.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Are we to posit that Ginger drove from LA to Midland, Texas in a Miata?
Or did she rent that at the West Texas airport or wherever she landed?
Did she bring her own techno CD and put it in, or they just happen to rent out Miatas with the techno CD?
This was 2001. She had that sleeve with all the CDs and you're over your sun visor.
So she packed that.
Because you can't go anywhere without that.
Just trying to clear up some questions I had here. He leaves his dog behind, never to be seen again, starved to death in his stupid little trailer. And then he goes with Ginger, and we find out that he's recently released from prison, single dad, wants to see his daughter. His ex-wife, who's played by Drea De Matteo, tells him, it's illegal for you to see your daughter? Why would it be illegal for him to see his daughter? Is she also a convicted felon?
That's an excellent point.
That's not a thing. He's a hacker. He wasn't like arrested for child abuse.
That's right. He was this hacker that brought down an FBI surveillance thing.
He basically brought down Lucius Fox's contraption from the end of The Dark Knight, if you recall that. But yeah, Drea De Matteo, just incredibly obnoxious in this role, which is what she was told to do. The director told her, make everyone hate you immediately, and mission accomplished. But I find that whole storyline with the daughter just very poorly thought out.
The fact that it's illegal for him to see his daughter even is, I don't know who gets that kind of treatment, but it doesn't quite make sense with an 18-month sentence for a white-collar crime.
And then he breaks his probation, his parole constantly, and the cops are just like, all right.
Yeah, so Don Cheadle gets it. He's not interested in hassling him over that shit.
No one's going to pull him up on these charges of going to see your daughter.
But the character for me, let's get into Jackman as Stanley. I thought Hugh Jackman was a decent actor, and then I watched this movie, I'm like, was I wrong? Does he suck? Is he just miscast, or is this character written so confusingly that he just had an impossible task? Because it doesn't make sense. A lot of time is spent on contrasting him as the responsible dad versus his ex-wife, who's a porn actress, but she's abusing drugs and alcohol. She's filming porn in the house where her daughter lives, which seems highly irresponsible. So like,
she just has fat rails ready to go when she wakes up. She didn't have to cut them that morning. Just lines of coke everywhere.
She's doing well for herself on that count. But so he really contrasts. He's buttoned up. He's given up his life of crime. But then at the same time, he's super susceptible to this juvenile stuff. You show him some tits and ass and you give him a shot at tequila and he's like, maybe I should get back into hacking and maybe I could use the money to help my daughter. But he plays to me as the dad. Like, I totally buy him as the protective dad in this. Totally works. As the sleazy computer hacker who's not good with women, so he's like easily tempted by seeing a boob. That didn't work at all for me with Hugh Jackman in the role.
I agree. I do think he's miscast as this kind of bad boy hacker. Even the way he's styled in the movie feels like it doesn't mesh with Hugh Jackman as an actor. The clothes he wears, the haircut he has, the little earring. I'm going to keep bringing up the earring because I find it hilarious.
It's very, very noticeable.
I think you're looking at it through the wrong lens. You have to remember, this is a guy, how old is Hugh Jackman in 2001? Let's say his character's 38 in the movie. He's a divorced dad. Yeah. That's the key word there.
Okay.
Divorced. So all the tits and ass and tequila and stuff, he's, I'm sowing my wild oats again, you know? Like, I get that part. Oh. Not that I get it. Cut that. You know, like, you have to look at it, he's Elon. Yes. Think about the parallels.
That's true.
The computer savviness, although it's debatable how much of that is real or imagined. Yeah. The dressing way younger, claiming you want to see your kid, but like at the same time flying off to work with this other company in another state.
A lot of parallels.
He's got real divorced dad energy in those scenes.
Now you convinced me, because you know what stacks on top of the fact that he's divorced? Not only is it illegal for him to see his daughter, it's illegal for him to touch a computer. This man has not had access to porn since before he went to prison.
He's buying magazines at the store like a vagrant.
Exactly. That's why when he sees a boob, he loses it. It's all over for him.
He was in jail for 18 months and hasn't been able to watch porn since he got out. He's backed up in a terrible way.
Just an awful way.
Man, needs a release.
Okay.
Literally. And
now he works for me as a character. I take back everything I said. So what happens? Let's talk about what happens. Gabriel obviously senses all this because he sets him up for this test. He flies him to LA. He gets into this nightclub. They go into this semi-private room, although the only thing separating them is a sheer
glass
curtain.
wall.
It's not even a glass wall. I looked again. It's like a curtain with these panels, these sheer panels in it. So even when he says, let's get some privacy, you can still see straight into that room.
Helga doesn't seem to mind.
So yes, we mentioned he was sexually assaulted. The movie does not treat it that way. The movie treats it as something awesome and hard to deal with for poor Stanley because
can't concentrate. His dick's getting sucked so good.
Man. But the thing is, she doesn't come on to him and get him excited. He looks at her like, okay, don't bother me, lady. I'm trying to make this deal with this shady character. And then one of the henchmen pulls his arms forcibly behind his back while Helga unzips his zipper. He's being assaulted, like he's not being seduced. And then, of course, he has a gun to his head. So what world is this that the screenwriter is trying to tell us?
He was 100% flaccid when she started sucking.
You can't imagine being anything but shriveled at the point that she opened his pants. And yet, but that's not how it's played. And unfortunately, Jackman has to play it the way it's written, which is he's getting off while he has a gun to his head, while Gabriel is counting down the 60 seconds to hack the Defense Department.
Gabriel loves counting down 60 seconds, by the way. That's like his thing.
It totally is. It's a recurring theme. Don't say the screenwriter didn't employ some craft here. But who is this guy? Who are we supposed to believe about this world and this guy whose life is literally on the line? He's being forced to commit a crime, which he knows will send him back into prison and make him never be able to see his daughter again. And also, but this chick, she's blonde and I don't know, she's kind of hot. I'm kind of getting off during this whole scene. Like, what the fuck?
It's a very like late 90s, early 2000s approach to like sexual assault of men specifically. You would see this attitude a lot around stories of teachers seducing young male students. They'd be like, that's fucking rad, dude. Hell yeah. And it's like, no, like now we're a little more aware of the long-term implications of those kind of interactions and the damage they could do. But it was still like, to give Swordfish a little bit of credit, it was less recent than That's My Boy, which had a similarly blasé attitude towards like the sexual assault of men.
That's true.
That was 2012. That was 11 years after this one.
You would think we would have come some way, maybe not a long way, but no, we went nowhere.
You know who came a long way? Stanley, probably.
It's not clear whether he does, but it's kind of like he does, right? At the same moment.
When he spins the computer around, you're supposed to like pause it. I think that, he just.
Not only did he get in, he got off.
Oh.
Good times.
Yeah, and also hacking apparently is just typing random words and hitting enter like really fast.
It's so dumb. I can almost excuse that because there's so much else to complain about that, yes, the hacking in this movie it's just one notch above the most clueless kind of like computer NCIS ignorance.
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's like a few references to real things. Somebody did some research and they use a few words that reflect some understanding of this is a certain kind of a cipher or that's actually the name of a government program or something. But then, he's just pounding on the keyboard. And what they show on the screen is just listing directories. What you see are just like lists of subdirectory names coming out. And I was like, what is he doing? He's just browsing a server.
Wait, Ian, how much do you know about hacking? Because the way you're explaining this stuff, I'm starting to wonder if you have a secret past as a hacker.
I worked in computers, so to speak. I was never a coder or a systems engineer, but like I did learn how to log into a Linux box, navigate my way to a subdirectory, open up some config file in a text editor. So like I recognize some of the stuff that comes up on screen. And it wasn't much. There's very little of substance. And then when they ask him to explain it, there's a whole scene where Ginger and Gabriel are excited about like, how did you do that hack? And just to get over the fact that he did nothing, he goes, I don't even know how I do it. It comes out.
That's a nice workaround when you don't have the technical expertise to explain what just happened.
Yeah, make it so the character doesn't even know.
I guess what they did is they consulted with the NSA about the hacking in this movie, but I think I know very little of hacking, but what I do know is that the NSA typically just hires hackers to do their really hard work.
Oh, okay.
They give them exorbitant like consultant fees or contractor rates, and they're just like, we don't want to be the guys that like sit here and do the hacking.
Right.
We just want to pay you to do it. We'll just facilitate. So paying them to be your consultant is like cutting out the real experts.
There's very little acknowledgement of that reality in this movie. The filmmakers were like, no, they made Stanley a pariah in society for having been a hacker, when actually that leads you generally to getting jobs in computer security once you've paid your debt to society. But that's not his reality.
One thing that the movie Bad Boys did better, they had a guy who used to help them around the police station, do some hacking.
That's more like real life, but this movie's not that much like real life. That's okay.
Should I move on to the middle section of the movie?
Sure, let's hear what happens next.
All right. Back at his swanky house, Gabriel wows Stanley with naked girls and a computer with 7 monitors, and Stanley agrees to take the job. The job job is to hack a particular bank which holds $9 billion in forgotten DEA funds. Gabriel works for the Black Cell, a secret U.S. government project that deters terrorism through violent retaliation, and stealing this money is how he's going to fund his operations. As Stanley and company get rolling, his former nemesis, FBI Agent Roberts, played by Don Cheadle, starts to clue in that something's going on. One night as Gabriel and Stanley are out for a drive, Gabriel notices they're being followed, so he gives Stanley the wheel and proceeds to gun down 4 SUVs full of FBI agents. Realizing that the U.S. Senator in charge of the Black Cell was the one who tried to shut him down, Gabriel takes a helicopter to Oregon, where the senator is fly fishing and shoots him dead. Stanley decides he wants out of the job, but Gabriel kills his ex-wife and kidnaps his daughter Halle as leverage. Now, that fly fishing scene in Oregon, was that just filmed in like the LA River?
I was wondering if that's really Oregon, but it doesn't look like anything that I know in California, but who knows how far they went. But at least it was like a real river. That was actually some nice scenery.
Yeah, it was not bad. And Sam Shepard playing the senator, he's always a reliable hand at this type of stuff.
He's a very stock character in this. He has no original personality. He's just Senator Dude from wherever. And he says tough guy senator type stuff.
When you have a Rottweiler, he might love you, but if he bites you even once, you gotta put him down. Oh, they did go to Oregon to shoot that.
That's where they spent the money. And it's nice. It paid off. They got some nice scenic shots out of it. We talked about how the opening scene was brutal and strange. This scene also, because of its strangeness, was a little beyond what you'd seen before. The bad guy flies to meet the senator while he's fly fishing and just shoots him with a big old gun.
Yeah, it was like a weird anticlimactic murder for all that.
Yeah.
I always wonder when you have those big face-offs before you shoot somebody, like, whose benefit is that? Who's that for?
It's for us, the moviegoer.
Why don't you just send someone to shoot him? Why do you have to go there yourself, Gabriel? You seem busy.
Gabriel monologued a little bit in that one and told him how disappointed he was and that he was failing America. So I guess he had some shit he had to get off his chest.
Right, but my point is, once you're done with the monologue and you shoot him, like, he's fucking dead now. He doesn't remember what you told him.
It's true. Yeah, I wonder if you feel like hollow after that. Like, oh, that was kind of a waste.
It does seem like a waste, right? So one of the strangest scenes in this movie is, first we have to talk about Halle, because this is where we really meet Halle.
Halle is his daughter, right?
Who is dressed like Janis Joplin, apparently, or Jamie Jorp Jorp if you're a 30 Rock fan.
That was a spooky twist because it's not explained. She's she's a rich kid. She goes to this fancy private school, which I guess the adult movies are paying for a nice lifestyle, at least for the daughter. But her mom's really neglectful.
Except like her mom never picks her up from school. She's always like drunk and oversleeping.
Yeah, so Stanley is like, I got to take a break from my hacking now that I'm in California and try to see my daughter. And she's there on the playground all alone because her mom, again, crashed out, didn't pick her up from school. But what was Stanley thinking he could meet her? He was 2 hours late. If her mom was even the slightest bit competent, he would have never found his daughter at school 2 hours after it let out.
That's a good point. I didn't even think of it.
He's just as much of a fuck up still, even though he bought a suit for this meeting with her. And she's like, I better.
Didn't take his earring out though.
She's like, oh, what if my dad comes? I better dress up. It's 60 psychedelic day at private school. She's got a flower blouse, a shaggy vest over it. Where do you even find something like that unless you're thrifting hardcore?
She's got the sunglasses with the red little circles.
She's got like prescription glasses, but they're tinted. She looks like a little freakhead and she acts kind of out of it. I'm like, what is this girl supposed to be? There's not enough characterization in what she has to say to explain what a weirdo she looks like. It's like we're going to make the daughter a really interesting character, but then they gave her generic lines.
It's like peacocking again. Like they went the route of the henchman. They're like, we just got to make her look weird and then people will notice her. Like she'll stand out. It won't just be another stock character. But that actress, Cameron Grimes, is like an adult actor now. She made it out of the Child Star. She was in Magic Mike.
Oh, cool.
She's been in some stuff. Yeah. But she's not bad in this movie, but just the characterization they give her is very half-assed.
Yeah, it's weird. Unlike some of the stuff which is cliche, she's not designed to be unbearably cute and make you worry about her. She's designed to throw you off and be like, wait a minute, someone needs to explain what's going on in this family, but no one does.
So after he drops her off at her mom's house, Don Cheadle and his boys ambush him because they've been sitting on the mom's house. And this leads us to a very improbable scene where they just careen down a cliff. Like 5 of them? No, 3 of them. And then one guy like takes the car and like goes down the hill to meet them at the bottom.
It definitely evokes a certain kind of a scene in maybe 80s action movies where the sassy bad guy mouths off to the cops and there's some punches traded on each side, ends up with a bloody nose and talks smack to each other. It seems like a kind of a It's a tropey scene, but it's filled in the middle with this kind of, is it supposed to be comedy? So like Stanley makes a break for it, runs out the back of the house, which leads up to this beachside cliff. He comes to the end of the line. There's nothing but a rail and a cliff down to the sand below. And he jumps it. And then the two cops do that thing where Cheadle goes right after him. And then the third cop checks it out and goes, oh shit, I guess I got to go. And each one, as they go over, starts tumbling in just a comedic way, just like moaning and just flopping around down the side of this cliff. And we talked about there's very little CGI. I think one of the CGI shots was the look down that cliff, because I don't think that cliff existed in real life.
Oh,
so if you notice, when Jackman gets to the rail and looks over, there's like a computer image of looking down at a cliff, and it looks terrible. It looks nothing like real life. And then there's only close-ups of a guy and a sandy wall behind him as he flops around down. It's funny.
I kind of want to go back and rewatch. You watch the map of third death scene, and I'll watch the looking down the cliff scene.
Yes, we both have funny bits to go back for. At this point, the movie's so weird and off-putting that I wasn't sure if they meant it to be funny. I hope they did, because it was funny. I had a laugh.
Then they get to the bottom of the cliff, and this is the part that bothers me. Don Cheadle's like, that was a dick move, man. What are you doing in California? You don't want to tell me? All right, fine. I'll see you later. Like, no, he broke your partner's nose. He made you fall down a cliff. You said he almost got you killed, because he almost did. And then you're just like, fine, you don't want to tell me? Whatever. And then you just leave him? Like, no. He's breaking his probation.
Yeah.
He assaulted a police officer. He's fleeing. Like, there's so many crimes you could arrest him for right now.
And the most serious crime, seeing his daughter, which is highly illegal, as we know.
Yeah. Probably a computer in his ex-wife's house. That just being in the same city block as a computer
was too
probably
close.
get him in federal prison for quite a while.
They don't really rationalize it, because in another movie, they would have maybe said, okay, now I've got you. Now you got to wear a wire, or now you got to help me track what Gabriel's doing. But he just goes, I'll see you around. And I'm like, okay.
Bizarre. And then you think maybe like he's leaving him out there as bait or something, but then like, there's no payoff to it. We don't know why he's like stringing Jackman along, if that's even what he's doing.
I think there might be a whole bunch of that got cut out of this movie, because they have kind of a relationship at the end. Jackman leaves Gabriel in the middle, and he's forced to come back and help him with the heist at the end. And he's kind of on Cheadle's side at that point, but no more of that has been shown on film. But you get the feeling they worked some kind of deal, but it's never seen.
That makes sense. I could see that happening. And then when he gets back to the house, more twists are just coming at us left and right. Ginger is in her bra and panties with a wire taped to her body. So immediately everyone's like, what the hell? She pulls a gun out of somewhere. I don't even know where the gun was, but she's in her underwear and she's got a gun.
She's wearing the thinnest, tightest dress. Stanley is at her bedroom door watching her take that dress off. I thought she had iPod earbuds on, but no, that was a wire. I guess in 2001, white cords means wearing a wire and not earbuds, but
iPods were out in 2001.
Were they?
It was released in October 2001.
Oh, shit.
Oh, they were just a little too early.
Because it took me a while to figure out why does then she draw a gun on him the moment she sees him. It's like, why is she freaking out? She's been showing her boobs already to try to tease him and get him worked up. But no, it's because he saw she's wearing a wire and she admits she's a DEA agent.
Now, here's my question. If she's really a DEA agent, why does she need a wire? Wouldn't her word of being in these interactions, like it's no longer hearsay.
That's a good question.
It's a firsthand account from a law enforcement officer.
That's true.
To be like, I guess having the recording is worthwhile, but if she has a sexual relationship with Gabriel, having her wear a wire seems insanely reckless.
She has so much access to the house, she could have planted some devices that she doesn't have to under her incredibly tight dress.
It's a strange choice, but there's maybe a reason she's not acting like a real DEA agent. We'll get into that later.
Nothing is what it seems in this movie because the filmmaker is getting over on you.
But then it is. Where we end up with her is exactly where we started.
Yeah, we'll try to reconcile that at the end when everything comes down to it.
Then we get into my favorite part of the movie, the big hacking scene, the big hack, if you will, where Stanley shows us, for once and for all, settles the debate. Is the internet really just a series of tubes? And come to find out, sure as fuck is.
It is. It's a series of tubes.
My man sits down at his Twitch streaming setup. Seriously, like I swear we hear like angels when they see this computer setup. It's just seven like 15-inch monitors.
It's seven little funky old screens that were the best you could get in 2001.
Every 15-year-old Twitch streamer has that and more now. But that's fine because I feel like that probably was cutting edge at the time. I can't fault them for being current with the technology of the time the movie came out. But he does this big hack and they literally, when he hits the button to send a hack through, they literally cut to a series of tubes and we go along with it and it makes like a whooshing sound. It's like whoosh, 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 whoosh. And then like it gets to the end and there's like, we did it. This is amazing.
Yes, we are whooshed along a long series of tubes. And the strange thing I noticed on the second time, the background, there's some whooshing sounds as we race through the tubes, but there's also a jumble of voices. Almost sounds like when you're possessed by ghosts kind of effect in another movie. There's like a bunch of...
like the dude in Constantine who can,
Exactly. But I guess it's supposed to be telecommunications going over all these wires. But like, why people weren't talking over the internet in 2001? They were typing.
I don't know, man. I love it so much.
And then to me, it gets worse because there's a second. This is the main hacking sequence, which I don't know if we should bother to explain it. His big hack in this sequence that blows Ginger and Gabriel's mind is that he logs back into the server in the basement of Caltech where he left the code for his worm. Like, he doesn't even crack something or do anything impressive. He just goes and picks up some shit that he left in a basement, and yet he whooshes over there through such an incredible high-speed tube ride that it thrills everybody involved, including you and me.
He's like Andy Dufresne at the end of the Shawshank Redemption, but instead of going to get his box of money, he's going to get his worm that he did.
But then there's another hacking scene later, which kind of blurs together in my memory of this movie.
Very much so.
But that's when I think he writes the actual worm that he's being coerced to create for hacking the bank. And that's where he gets super melodramatic. And in that scene, we understand you have to do something to make hacking visual because otherwise it doesn't look like shit. Not very cinematic. So they did the tubes in the first time. The second time, it's all about showing his screen and little spinning cubes are assembling into a big Rubik's Cube. And it's all just bad graphics. At some point, we were like, does he say I'm in? Please say I'm in. He says, voila, voila.
Damn it. So close.
Which means, I think in French means I'm in, but I haven't looked that up.
Let's not fact check it. That's true. You made this point, I think maybe just when we were talking off air, but hacking is just not a very visual thing.
Yeah.
It's not super interesting to watch. It's hard to make a movie about hacking work. There haven't been many. Talk about Black Hat in a few months. There'll be another one, but
yeah,
Black Hat's better than this though.
Is it?
By like a lot.
So this is where maybe I totally lost faith in Hugh Jackman pulling off this movie because they do make him try to make that coding session into something very melodramatic. And he has all these ups and downs. It's like a montage. And he's like, he's happy, he's thrilled. Yes, go, we're getting in there. And he's like, no, this is never going to work. And he's getting up and he's spinning around and he's cursing and he's throwing stuff. And it's like,
he's drinking wine.
He's drinking a lot of wine, which we'll get to in a minute, but it doesn't work for me. This is where Jackman Stanley like totally falls apart. I don't buy what he's doing. And if he's trying to be hammy here, it's not working. He's not on Travolta's level of selling ham to the masses.
I don't know if Jackman's ever trying to be hammy. I think he's naturally a cornball. But again, I think he's probably a little sincere for this role.
Yes.
Doesn't play to his strengths.
That's a good description of it. I can't connect him to the guy he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But he does drink a lot of wine, which leads him down to the wine cellar and something weird down there.
Before we get to the something weird you're talking about, I have something weird I want to talk about.
Okay, tell me.
So this wine cellar is super impressive, right? They've got bottles and bottles, every kind of wine you could imagine. And he's just looking for the same bottle he just had? Why don't you fucking broaden your horizons, Stanley? First of all, do you like this wine that much that you're just like, I'm going to bypass all these other wines and just stick with this one because, it tasted pretty good. You have all the fucking wine in the world at your fingertips. Try some variety. Jesus Christ, man. Very frustrating.
That needed to be said. That was frustrating.
It'd kill to have access to that cellar and just sample.
Except the fun is kind of spoiled when you realize that there's a corpse in the cellar.
And it must be a corpse. It can't just be a dummy because like they do an autopsy on it at the end.
Yeah.
It's got to be a corpse they made to look like him. But that's weird because it looks so much like him.
So did we even mention this in trying to summarize what happens? He's picking out the wine and he sees a corpse and it's John Travolta, right? It's Gabriel's dead. He thought he just saw Gabriel, and now here he is dead in his own wine cellar, and he goes running up to the house, and who does he run into but Gabriel, alive and well. And that's all you learn for another 30 minutes of the movie. Just this really weird, spooky, almost supernatural feeling clue, like something much more than bank heist is going to go on here. They're going to pull what I call the prestige. This movie's going to try to do a prestige on you, and suddenly it's about cons and stowed away corpses.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman actually cloned Jon Travolta and then drowned him.
Okay,
so
that's
what that was. First of all, they start setting up this prestige, as you say, and Gabriel asks Stanley the most fucking patronizing question I've ever heard, which is, have you ever heard of Harry Houdini?
That was dumb.
I would throw a fucking elbow to your temple if you ever started a sentence like that with, who the fuck are you talking to, man? He's clearly like one of the smartest men in America, Stanley is. Have you ever heard of Harry Houdini, the most famous magician of all time? Kiss my ass. Just bad writing. But then Gabriel's giving this whole speech about misdirection. No, they're clearly laying the groundwork for there's going to be some shit going down that you're going to misunderstand for a little while.
And then an action movie breaks out.
We forgot we're in an action movie.
He thought this was all about subterfuge and computer chicanery, but they needed to have some big action. So Gabriel goes, hold the wheel, and he does like a fucking John Woo thing. He stands up in his little convertible and fires 2 guns in both directions, killing 2 SUVs full of FBI agents. And the SUVs don't stop there. They keep coming, and he has to pull out a big machine gun and blow them up.
But before this whole sequence, they go to the cafe that the movie begins in.
Oh, this whole second act is a jumble. There's so much shit going down.
And it's not really important what they talk about it in that scene, except for the fact that Gabriel mentions there's this slush fund of DEA money that Gabriel says was $400 million 15 years ago. And now with interest, it has grown to $9.5 billion.
That's interest?
What kind of fucking bank is this?
I feel like they taught us how to do compound interest in school at some time. And I know it's always more than you think, but is it that much more than you think? It's appropriately hyperbolic for this movie, which is going big with everything, but it does make you ask questions.
Well, somebody calculated it. That would represent an interest rate of 21% per year. So at a 6%, which is like a appropriate interest rate for the time period, they'd have $981 million, which still seems like enough to fund this operation they got, assuming they make additional money throughout their escapades.
Gabriel's greedy. He wants to be able to buy nuclear warheads at a bulk discount. That's where his sights are set. But yeah, what are these operations? They're taking out terrorists. How much could that cost? We just have to be a little more cost conscious, not take the private
Tighten
jet.
the belt, Gabriel. All right, let's get through the end of the movie.
All right, here we go. Now, we're back at the bank where we started, and Gabriel's plan is in full swing. By holding his daughter Halle hostage, Gabriel forces Stanley to implement his worm and transfer the money. But Stanley had coded in a trick that moved the money right back out of Gabriel's accounts. So to get him to undo the trick, Gabriel threatens Ginger's life. Stanley does as he told, so Gabriel sets Halle free, but he ends up shooting Ginger dead anyway, saying he knew that she was DEA, or so it seems. Then Gabriel puts Stanley and all his hostages on a bus to the airport for the getaway that they just negotiated with the cops, or so it seems. But Gabriel outwits the FBI by having a giant helicopter swoop in, hoist the bus off of the highway, and drop it at the top of a downtown skyscraper. Gabriel's about to get away on another chopper until Stanley grabs a rocket launcher and blows it out of the sky, sending Gabriel to his fiery death. Or so it seems. Flash forward to Stanley enjoying a peaceful, comfortable life with his daughter. Meanwhile, in Monte Carlo, we see the supposedly dead Gabriel and Ginger, with new haircuts, collecting their stolen money from a bank and putting it to good use, blowing up some terrorists.
Just 2 kids in a speedboat and $10 billion. The world is their oyster.
They're such patriots, though. I mean, if the entire world believed you were dead and you had $9 billion to yourself in a bank account, would you still be so dedicated as these two are to spending your time blowing up terrorists?
I'm not sure that they're related. The yacht blowing up and them being in this, like they're on a speedboat in Monte Carlo. Is that like a hotbed of terrorism?
No, I think I would have the same question, except that I'm pretty sure that the movie shows them speeding that boat towards the blowing up yacht, right?
No, yeah, I was joking. The movie is clearly making that connection as being a silly goose.
The movie is a silly goose. Why were they speeding towards the boat if they had already wired it to blow up? Shouldn't they be speeding away from it and making their getaway and on to the next thing?
Jon Travolta had a look in the mirror and saw his haircut, and he was like, nope, I gotta kill myself now. I'm going head first into this fucking explosion.
He got the frosted
He's got like
tips.
Some short, spiky blonde hair. It's pretty bad. He doesn't have a soul patch anymore, though, so that's good.
His different colored eyes.
Oh, I didn't even notice the eyes.
Yeah, I noticed that. Only because the corpse had the same light blue eyes that Travolta had earlier, and they did a lot of showing the corpse's eyes.
They do close up on his face, too. They were clearly trying to draw attention to that, but I missed it. So let's get back to the beginning of this section. You raise a question here that I don't have an answer to and might break the whole movie for me. Like, why did they need to go to the bank?
I don't know.
It's all done on a computer.
I tried to spot it on my second watch, but I wasn't paying as good attention. I remember on the first watch, there is a scene where Gabriel's monologuing again to Stanley, and Stanley like jumps ahead of him and he goes, "Oh, you mean you're going to have to go in the bank?"
He said, "Oh, you're going to the bank." He says something like that. Like,
yeah, like he catches on
through the phone wires.
But I didn't catch on. It made no sense to me. And it doesn't make sense in a general way when you try to rationalize it without the specifics. It's like, they have the world's greatest hacker and they have a crime that is entirely a cyber adventure. Just figure it out.
It's not like they go there and take any physical money out. Yeah, like it's all done on a laptop at the bank.
I guess maybe it's just because that terminal only existed in the bank and you couldn't get to it from outside. But I mean, their whole thing is about getting through the firewalls, man. I got to get through the firewall. And it's like, no, you can never get through it. And he's like, well, I'll give you 60 seconds. It's like, okay, I did it. The thing the movie teaches you is it's always possible and it's easier than you think. And yet they had to go in the bank and kill people and do all this destruction.
This bank had a little known security popularity feature, which was the warmer and colder feature, which is if you wanted to take out money from the bank, you'd have to be physically close to the money and they'd be like, you're warmer, you're warmer. And then you'd be like, you're getting colder. And you'd be like, oh, I got to go back this way. Talk to the bank teller on this side. And that's how you got your money. It's not really a popular feature anymore.
No, I'm really glad I don't have that on my account. I like to do everything on my phone these days.
It's much easier. So again, what the fuck is the point of all this Ginger shit? Why is she's Gabriel's right-hand lady, his lover, second in command, but then wait, no, she's in the DEA. And then we're going to kill her because we know she's in the DEA, but she's not really in the DEA. Like, I know it's because she's supposed to be dead so that she can move around the globe relatively easily. But you could have just killed her like she could have just been Gabriel's right-hand lady and blown up on the chopper with him.
Yeah, she could have been on the chopper. That's the simplest thing. And then I'm like, okay, I think they did it to make her sympathetic so that they would have additional leverage over Stanley. Because Gabriel, for all his bulletproof, incredible mastermind planning, lets Stanley's daughter Halle out of the bank before it's a done deal, or he thinks it's a done deal. And then he realizes Stanley's little backdoor double cross.
Backdoor double cross sounds like one of his ex-wives movies. Oh,
yikes. So like he ends up needing that leverage, right? Because Holly's gone. She's free. A SWAT guy scooped her up. So he's once again at gunpoint at the threat of something terrible. He has to force Stanley to do some real fast hacking. Thankfully, he did this incredibly deep, long con work to set up this relationship with Ginger. So he has somebody that Stanley cares about.
It does become fatiguing when like every single decision and move made, Gabriel has already plotted out and kind of coursed every possible outcome and come up with a contingency and solution for it. It's not really a fun way to watch a movie.
No.
It's like a Goldberg machine that's just set in motion and you just have to fucking stand there and look at it.
Before I knew what the outcome would be, I'm like, for a heist movie, this is really not suspenseful because Gabriel has it all under control. There's nothing he wants that he's not getting that you go, oh my God, I wonder if such and such is going to even happen or everything's going to go bad. It's never like that. It's like he's just in control and all you're doing is because you know they've dropped that hints about a prestige coming up is that like the movie's going to do something weird, but you're not like worried about the situation being weird until it gets really weird.
Speaking of really weird, the helicopter bus sequence.
Yeah.
Right? I guess that's where we go from here. The big action set piece in the movie. They literally hooked a bus up to like a crane and dangled it from the air in front of a blue screen to film this.
Whoa. Okay.
It cost several millions of dollars. And apparently like the stunt coordinators were like, we told the director like there's cheaper, easier ways to do this. And he said no. I think he was dead set on doing it this way.
I feel like it paid off. I do have to give him some credit. Once again, they took the action to a place where I didn't see coming and it's fun. But the other weird thing about this chopper sequence, we were talking about Gabriel's plan is making the cops irrelevant because he's just getting everything he wants. Here, there's suddenly a fuck up. And you can tell why it's done to escalate the action movie intensity. The bus is flying along and they left the cops in the dust. And then all of a sudden the pilot's like, I didn't know about wind. I can't fly this shit. And he starts crashing into buildings. It's like, okay, it's funny. 2 of the 4 cables snap, so the bus is hanging sideways. And this is like the first chink in Gabriel's perfect reputation. He hired a pretty bad chopper pilot that couldn't figure out how to lift this bus above the buildings before he flew into the middle of downtown. And now he's swinging left and right in between all these skyscrapers.
It is a strange wrinkle, but also it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme. It just heightens the action, like you said. And one hostage falls out with one henchman and they blow up. It's Vinnie Jones that blows up.
Poor Vinnie Jones.
Right after he was threatening to shove his gun up the hostage's ass for some reason. It's like, why are you harassing this poor hostage?
He gets really in the face of this one guy for eyeballing him. Like that kind of comes out of nowhere. And it's maybe only there so that he can call attention to the rocket launchers, which are about to come into play.
I don't know if this was the scene, but there was also apparently a scene where Vinnie Jones was planning to do his own stunt. And John Travolta was like, I don't know, man, that sounds dicey, and talked him out of it. And then his stuntman, the stunt went horribly and he broke his spine.
Oh, shit. That sounds like this could be it.
So that's a dark undercurrent to that situation.
Somebody got hurt. Yeah. Sucks.
Yeah, there's real consequences to it.
But not in the movie. In the movie, you can shoot Gabriel down and he goes up in a ball of flames, but it was all a trick. He wasn't even in that chopper.
And that's my problem, is that we don't find out he wasn't in that chopper until a flashback to Stanley seeing him, not even seeing him, seeing someone run down a staircase next to where the new chopper was. And it's fine. Can't something be like what it seems?
It's kind of change. Cheap. Yeah.
If everything's a twist, nothing's a twist. I'm not even like anticipating the twists and the turns anymore. I'm just fatigued and over it.
Yeah. And like like we said, did Vinnie Jones specifically start that fight with the hostage so he could say rocket launcher real loud in front of Stanley so that when Stanley later saw Gabriel supposedly taken off in the other chopper, he would remember, oh, there's rocket launchers in the back of the bus. Let me grab one and shoot him down. Because he feels like his whole scheme hinged on Stanley being a good shot the first time he ever picked up a rocket launcher.
The shot seems way off target at first. So it must be like one of those heat-seeking missiles because it looks like it's going to make a beeline past the helicopter and then it turns kind of at the last second.
Kind of curves in, yeah.
Yeah, it's so contrived. If that's really, it's too mastermindy. There's no way you could have anticipated all of these little events coming together in this way. And it stops being fun after a certain point.
The script ends up having the same attitude as Gabriel. Like, I'm smarter than you. I worked this out. Just shut up and take it. It's not that fun.
Yeah, that's what he said to Stanley, right? Before he made Helga suck his dick. And then, like we said, we get the flash forward to Stanley and his daughter, I guess living large with 10 mil in the bank and just what she gets to keep somehow.
Another thing that you shouldn't question too closely or it starts to break down. As we know, like Don Cheadle already let him off the hook for all kinds of infractions. And then they find out he basically assisted in stealing all this U.S. government money. Even though it's like, oh, the DEA forgot about it, it's still not his money to give away. And he certainly a lot of criminal conspiracy charges. Maybe he was coerced into doing all of it. But you think that the U.S. government might bring him up on charges. But no, they're like, enjoy your money. Gabriel paid you $10 million. Go buy an RV and tour the country with your girl. You deserve it.
She doesn't need to be in school or anything.
She's just taking him to the petrified forest.
Whatever. And then Gabriel and Ginger living the high life in Monte Carlo, blowing up terrorists, driving on little cigarette boats.
I was wondering, is Gabriel the hero of this movie? Because he overcomes a bunch of obstacles and he perseveres. And in the end, he wins. Despite being utterly despicable, it's transparent to everybody that as he's making all the speeches about, I'm a patriot and I'm doing this to protect Americans from terror, he's unleashing ungodly amounts of terror. And this movie came out before 9/11, but
just before,
ironically, the amount of terror that he unleashed in the U.S. with the assassination of a senator and his staff, this horrible bank robbery where he's blowing people up and killing cops and hostages, and all the other mayhem he unleashes was worse than anything that had struck the U.S. at that point, or at least as shocking and horrifying. So it's transparently ironic that he thinks he's the good guy, but the movie kind of treats him as one. It lets him win. It's either saying that it wants you to think he was the good guy or that, ha ha, fuck you, the world's fucked up, get used to it. Just that nasty shithead attitude coming back again.
Troy Duffy-esque attitude, yeah.
Exactly.
I think the movie likes Gabriel. If it doesn't consider him the hero, it definitely considers him at least an anti-hero. It is not trying to make us root against him by the time the movie's over.
And it is strange. You could see a movie doing that in the aftermath of 9/11 when America was like, we got to get our payback. I mean, there was terror in the world, but it doesn't seem to justify the attitude of this movie and this character in it.
No, and I thought at first that was the point. But then, I don't know, the way the movie ends, it seems to undermine that. I thought we were supposed to feel like he's going too far and like ends don't justify the means and everything. But then the movie doesn't really commit to that.
No, there's no sign that something bad happened because Gabriel survives it. He gets his money. He gets his girlfriend back. He gets everything he wanted. And Stanley gets everything he wanted. So there was, aside from the smarmy senator and a bunch of people we didn't know, it's like everyone who we're supposed to relate to in this movie wins at the end.
Even Stanley's ex-wife getting murdered is kind of like a weird wish fulfillment thing because they set her up to be the literal like worst person in the world.
That's
so
true.
They're clearly, they don't want you to feel bad for her when she's dead.
No, they don't.
And then at the end of the movie, it's one less obstacle for Stanley and his daughter to be together all the time.
Yeah, his life is easier.
He doesn't have to share custody. He's got the money. He's got his daughter. Yeah, you're right. Gabriel gave him all that.
And Stanley, I forgot this other point. Stanley is complicit in not blowing Gabriel's cover. He's the only one who had seen the corpse in the wine cellar. He doesn't tell Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle's like, hey, look at this corpse. It's Gabriel. He's dead. Game over. This whole thing is behind us. And that's when Stanley realizes, oh, that's the corpse I saw. Gabriel survived. And he has the flashback, he said. He figures it all out. He doesn't say shit. He makes off with his money. He's like, no, this worked out good for me. I'm happy for Gabriel. I hope he and Ginger are happy together. And I'm going to keep my mouth shut. So what message are we supposed to take from that?
Anyway, that's Swordfish.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear a little bit about the people involved and where they went?
Yeah, let's hear what happened to them.
So Dominic Sena mentioned he directed California with a K. Good movie.
Yeah. Okay. Never saw
the
it.
only good movie he ever made. Ironically, every movie he ever made qualifies for this podcast.
Oh my God, we're going to have to bring him
including
back
California.
Okay.
I mean, Gone in 60 Seconds was originally on the schedule before this one, and we leapfrogged it. But so he did this, Gone in 60 Seconds, 13 Graves, Whiteout, and Season of the Witch. Season of the Witch is that terrible Nicolas Cage fantasy movie that lost a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And he seems retired since Season of the Witch. That was in 2011. There hasn't been anything new. He hasn't worked in TV. There's no other credits under his belt as far as I could tell. He's retired. And he was pretty young to retire in 2011. I think he's like 70 now.
Okay.
So he must have made enough money to live comfortably. Skip Woods wrote this movie.
Yeah.
Skip Woods. It's a fun name. He's written a lot of movies, all of them bad. Let me tell you about them.
Tell me.
He does not seem to understand hacking at all either, because he also did rewrites on Live Free or Die, which was the fourth Die Hard movie and has some of the most like nonsensical hacking scenes actually done by Raylan Givens himself, Timothy Olyphant.
Oh, okay.
Not the worst Die Hard movie, but not one of the good ones either. And then he wrote Hitman. Oh, so he's an Olyphant guy.
Oh,
Timothy Olyphant
that was okay. Got it.
X-Men Origins Wolverine. Real pile of dog shit that was. The A-Team. I forget that movie exists all the time. Future episode though.
That'll be fun.
He wrote the next Die Hard, A Good Day to Die Hard.
Oh.
Sabotage, which was like a Arnold Schwarzenegger's a DEA agent, steals a bunch of money thing. I remember when that movie came out, but I never saw it. But it got terrible reviews and lost money. And then the Hitman sequel, which recasted the role, so it's no longer Oliphant, called Hitman Agent 47. And then he wrote a script for a movie based on the Kane and Lynch video games, but it never materialized. It was going to star Bruce Willis and Jamie Foxx, and that's all. He's also been out of the game since Hitman Agent 47. So Skip and Dom are, I don't know if Skip Woods is retired. He just might not be working too much right now. But Hitman Agent 47 was in 2015. It's going on 8 years now since he's had anything come out.
It's a good stretch. I wonder if he moved on to something else.
Could be.
He's one of those guys where you get the feeling like he's a decently good writer and he's pretty savvy about movies, because he sometimes makes these moves that you're like, okay, somebody knows what they're doing. So then that means he's writing like a dirtbag on purpose, and it makes you like him less.
His picture on IMDb is kind of dirtbaggy, just saying. He looks like a bartender that would call himself a mixologist, if that makes sense. Or even to take it a step further, like a bartender who would call himself a beverage director.
Oh, he's moving up.
Like a corporate level bartender.
Yeah, he's upwardly mobile.
That's no shade to bartenders. I love bartenders. Some of my favorite people. So we already talked about Travolta quite a bit because he's been on The Punisher and Savages, but he's not doing great work and hasn't for a long time, and I think that's clear. Savages was a pretty good performance. This isn't a bad performance either. The Punisher's a pretty bad performance.
It was cheesy, and this one was similar.
He's got 2 movies in post-production, American Metal and Cash Out. They're both going to be bad. Spoiler alert. They both seem like they should co-star Steven Dorff, but only one of them does.
Okay. It's only so much Dorff to go around.
He's a busy man. So that's where he's at right now. Hugh Jackman, this was, like I said, only his 5th film performance. Pretty interesting to see him early on in his movie star career, but he's been in too many big movies to name. He's best known as Logan. You brought up The Prestige, one of my favorite Hugh Jackman performances. Moulin Rouge, Les Mis. He's done it all. And he's going to be picking up the mantle again, the claws, for Deadpool 3. He's returning as Logan. I think that's coming out 2023. I don't know for sure.
Our action stars are getting old, man. It's weird to watch them go through it.
Yeah, he's in his 50s. I can't imagine the amount of like testosterone replacement therapy he must be on to stay in shape for
to
these
keep
movies.
that body fat that low, where you have to be for these roles.
Can't have any roles for these roles.
No.
Halle Berry had a great 2001. She did this, which she got paid $2.5 million for. And then she followed it up with Monsters Ball, which is probably her most acclaimed performance. Won an Academy Award. She's very good in that movie. It's not a movie I revisit because it's upsetting, but she was good in it.
I don't think I ever saw it, but I remember it made a big splash, and she was an important actor after that.
She's worked steadily, up and down in terms of quality, but she seems to be having a bit of a resurgence now. Weirdly enough, she played a character named Ginger in Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Kingsman, though I don't like the Kingsman movies.
Oh, okay.
They exist. And then she joined the John Wick universe in the 3rd one, Parabellum.
Oh, okay.
Unclear if she'll be returning for those. I don't remember if she died in the 3rd one. I got to rewatch the trilogy before I see the 4th.
Yeah, I'm not sure I saw the 3rd one, but she seems like a good fit for that. And like age appropriate with Keanu, and it seems like that seems like a good pairing.
Yeah, no, she definitely fit right in there. That kind of heightened reality of the John Wick world meshes well with her acting style, I think.
I think you're right.
But she'll be starring in The Mothership and Our Man from Jersey, coming out this year. Those are both in post-production.
Okay.
And she was on that show, The Extant, for 2 years, which was like a sci-fi space thriller.
I've heard of it.
It might just be Extant. I don't think it's The Extant. I think I'm confusing it with The Expanse.
Oh, right. The Expanse and then Extant? I don't know how you say that word.
I'm not sure. Now, Ian, I understand we're going to be getting something we haven't gotten in a few months, which is a summarization of your feelings on this movie, a final thought, if you will.
A final thought. Should I hack in and see what final thought is behind the firewall? My thought is just, this movie's not about hacking. I thought it was about hacking because it's what people talk about. Oh, it's a hacking movie. There's a bunch of dumb hacking tropes in it. The hacking is just decoration in this movie. And if you believe Stanley is the hero, it's not about his hacking. It's about the challenges of him hanging around with some shitty people And like we said, if you think Gabriel might be the hero, then it's just a movie about executing a difficult plan. But in both cases, as we saw, if you remember what's important to you, whether that's your daughter or your anti-terror crusade, you'll pull through just fine. That's the message of the movie. But like throughout all this, there's a lot of hacking that occurs in the movie. But Stanley, as the erstwhile hero, his hacking skills are never challenged. Not on the little small jobs we see where he gets a little frustrated but knocks them right out. Not on the big one at the end. His success is never in doubt. The task never really gets harder. It only becomes more tense and aggravating because Gabriel's always putting him under duress while he's trying to do it. But like the actual skill that he's trying to pull off, he never fails. That's a really big part of it. If this was a movie about a hero whose thing was racing cars or was doing astrophysics, there would be some point in the movie where the character failed and was facing a big challenge and really doubted himself. Can I win the big race? Can I solve the big equation and win the Nobel Prize or whatever it is? But that doesn't happen. We're always very confident, and it's always proven right that he's going to just fucking nail the hacking job and do it faster than you thought it was possible to do. He's reduced to being like, oh no, a guy I don't like is forcing me to win the Indy 500. It's like the hero was just too good. It was all a done deal. And it was just like, how annoying was it going to be that he had to show off and win the race again? And would he be forced to do it on 2 wheels instead of all 4?
This movie almost has no obstacles to it because like they're dispatched so quickly, you can't even really call them obstacles. It's just a series of scenes of competent people doing things competently.
Yes, exactly.
But like in a sleazy way, which it's not that exciting of a premise for a movie.
It's a weird recipe. Something's off about it.
I think another reason this movie probably doesn't resonate is because it's in a genre of movie that's very dicey for sustainability and rewatchability. A techno thriller.
Yes.
A technologically based thriller. And when you want the tech in your movie to seem futuristic and cutting edge, you have to play a little bit of a guessing game. This is what I think people who are like really knowledgeable about computers will be doing in 5 years or whatever. Because when you're making the movie, it's got a long road to theaters. You want to make sure it's more current than current. It's got to be futuristic. So when you do that and you guess wrong, it makes your movie incredibly dated, like almost immediately, which is what I think happened with this movie or the movie like The Net with Sandra Bullock. And then the flip side to that is movies like Enemy of the State or Minority Report, which kind of posited about the future of technology and how it would impact crime and surveillance and the government. And they got it very right. And that makes those movies even more like prescient, and it makes them seem current and topical regardless of how long ago they were made. But it's such a gamble. If you get it wrong, you're kind of fucked. And they got it wrong.
I think you're right. I think those good examples you show are movies where it's an accomplishment in sci-fi writing to posit what the future might look like and to do a decent job of it. This one isn't even really trying to do that. It's trying to just show you maybe what's cutting edge, but like some of those things, because of the way you have to depict them on screen, some of them look ridiculous right away because you can't really show hacking very effectively. And then the rest of them, whatever did look okay within 5-10 years, it looks ridiculous because it's so outmoded. So you're in a losing battle.
I wonder how like Kimi will age. I'm trying to think of like more recent techno thrillers. And I think but that's one that was working with just a slightly more advanced version of what everyone has in their house already. So I think that's one that were like, they made a good bet on the technology used.
Yeah.
And just continue to iterate on that.
That's where the speculative and speculative fiction comes in. Are your speculations clever and sharply observed and worth watching?
Thank you guys so much for listening. We're going to be back next week with a recent one. We're doing The Northman.
Oh, wow.
Exciting, right? We're both Eggers heads. We're both eggheads.
We love Eggers. This movie I looked forward to this with such anticipation. I'll save my analysis, but it was different than I thought in interesting ways. So it'll be a lot of fun stuff to talk about.
Nice. I'm excited. I haven't seen it yet. So I'm really looking forward to it. I knew almost immediately it was going to be out on the pod. So I was like, I'll save it.
Oh, you saved it, man.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So that'll be next week. And please remember, rate, review, subscribe if you could. Helps new listeners find us. We appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter at BlastZonePod. Email us, blastzonepod@gmail.com. Questions, feedback, suggestions for movies, whatever you want to talk about. We're always there listening. And we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
Drop it.